Seattle had a quiet way of breathing, mist curling off the bay at dawn, the sound of distant ferries cutting through the fog. To Ethan, those mornings were sacred. He liked watching the city wake up while his coffee cooled beside him, the kind of routine that whispered comfort. At 28, he wasn't chasing noise anymore. He had a stable job as a graphic designer, a few good friends, and someone he believed was his forever. Ryan was everything Ethan wasn't. A fitness trainer with endless energy and a magnetic smile, he filled every space he entered with laughter. Where Ethan was calm and observant, Ryan was loud and alive, always in motion. They met 2 years ago when Ethan joined the gym where Ryan worked. Ethan had been drawn to his confidence instantly. What began as casual jokes during training sessions soon turned into late-night conversations and shared dinners. By the time they moved in together, it felt like the most natural decision in the world. Their apartment was a reflection of them, Ethan's quiet touches of art and Ryan's trophies on the shelf. Every Sunday, they'd cook breakfast together, dance in the kitchen, and talk about small dreams, getting a dog, traveling to Europe, maybe opening a fitness brand someday. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. Then, slowly, something began to shift. That IT started with small things, Ryan answering texts a little too quickly, his phone always turned face down on the table. He began spending longer hours at the gym, saying clients were increasing. Ethan didn't question it at first. Ryan's work often demanded flexibility. But lately, even when Ryan was home, he seemed elsewhere, present in body, absent in spirit. Ethan noticed the silences growing between them, how dinners turned into wordless meals and goodnight kisses became routine gestures rather than acts of love. Still, he kept telling himself it was temporary, just stress, a busy season, nothing more. But denial, Ethan would later realize, is a quiet poison. One Friday evening, Ryan mentioned a new client named Lucas, a young man training for a competition. Ryan spoke about him with a light in his eyes, the same excitement he once had when talking about Ethan. "He's motivated, dedicated," Ryan said one night, scrolling through his phone to show Ethan Lucas's progress pictures. Ethan smiled, though his stomach twisted with something he couldn't name. A few days later, Ryan invited him to the gym. "You should see the new renovation," he said, tightening his sneakers. "We've added new lighting, a spa area, the works." Ethan hesitated. It had been a while since he'd visited, and part of him felt like an outsider in Ryan's world now. But Ryan's tone was hopeful, almost insistent. "Come after work," he said. "You'll love it." That night, Ethan stood in front of the mirror, wondering what to wear. He laughed at himself for caring. This wasn't a date, after all, but something inside him wanted to look good for Ryan again. He settled on a simple shirt and jeans, brushed his hair, and left before he could overthink it. The gym smelled of polished floors and faint cologne. Music pulsed softly from overhead speakers, and the hum of treadmills filled the air. Ethan smiled at the familiarity of it all. This was where it began for them, where Ryan had first called him the quiet artist with the stubborn heart. When Ryan saw him enter, his face lit up with that same old charm. "You made it," he said, pulling him into a quick hug. For a brief moment, the distance between them seemed to vanish. Ryan began showing him around, pointing out new machines, polished mirrors, and the upgraded locker area. Ethan followed, watching Ryan talk passionately about everything he loved, yet, beneath the warmth, something still felt off. Ethan noticed how Ryan checked his watch often, his attention flickering toward the training area. A few clients waved at him. One of them, Lucas, smiled broadly from across the room. Ethan recognized him from the photos. There was an ease between Ryan and Lucas that felt almost personal, the kind of familiarity that used to belong to Ethan alone. Still, he pushed the thought away. Maybe he was just tired, imagining things. Ryan was his partner, his person. Trust, Ethan reminded himself, meant believing even when things felt uncertain. As they wrapped up the tour, Ryan excused himself for a quick meeting with a client. "Wait for me in the lounge?" he asked. Ethan nodded, smiling faintly. He sat there, scrolling through his phone, pretending to be unbothered while his reflection flickered across the glass wall opposite him. Behind that wall, laughter echoed from the changing room, soft, familiar, and too close to Ryan's voice to ignore. Ethan's heart gave a small, uncertain pause that he looked up toward the sound, eyes narrowing slightly. He couldn't have known it then, but that simple moment, the quiet curiosity, the faint suspicion, was the beginning of everything that would come undone, and for the first time in a long while, Seattle's calm felt like a silence before a storm. Ethan stayed seated in the lounge, phone still in hand though he wasn't reading anything. The laughter from the changing room came again, faint but distinct, Ryan's voice mixed with someone else's. He told himself it was nothing, just clients joking around. Still, something inside him stirred, an instinct he didn't want to name. The gym had mostly emptied, the soft buzz of treadmills had quieted, and the overhead lights cast a warm, reflective glow across the mirrors. The receptionist was packing up, and the hum of a vacuum cleaner echoed faintly from the far side. Ethan rose slowly, pretending to stretch. He walked down the hallway, past the weight racks and the lockers, following the direction of the sound without really meaning to. The laughter stopped at a heavy silence filled the corridor now, the kind that makes every small sound, his footsteps, his breathing, feel too loud. Ethan hesitated outside the changing room door. He didn't want to be the kind of person who snoops, who doubts. But doubt, once born, demands to be answered. He pushed the door open slightly, steam hung in the air, carrying the sharp scent of soap and the hum of running water. The mirrors were fogged, the benches cluttered with towels. And then, through the haze, he saw them. Ryan stood near one of the lockers, shirt half buttoned, his back turned. Lucas was there too, smiling nervously, adjusting his jacket. They weren't touching, not anymore. But there was something in the space between them, something intimate, unspoken, that filled the room more powerfully than any embrace could. For a moment, Ethan couldn't breathe. His mind refused to connect the pieces. The way Ryan looked at Lucas, gentle, almost protective. The way Lucas avoided Ethan's gaze when he finally noticed him standing there. It was all too clear. Ethan, Ryan's voice broke the silence, startled, fragile. Ethan's lips parted, but no words came. His throat felt tight, his pulse pounding in his ears. He dropped the towel he'd been holding, the sound startlingly loud against the tiled floor. "What is this?" Ethan asked quietly. His voice didn't carry anger, it carried exhaustion, the kind that comes when truth finally finds you. Ryan stepped forward, hands trembling slightly. It's not what you think," he said, though even as the words left his mouth, he looked like he didn't believe them. Lucas muttered something about leaving, grabbing his bag and heading toward the exit without meeting Ethan's eyes. The door swung shut behind him, and suddenly it was just the two of them, Ryan and Ethan, in a silence that felt heavier than any argument could. "Then tell me what it is," Ethan said, his tone calm but edged with disbelief. "Because I've been trying to understand why you've been distant, why you can't even look me in the eye lately." Ryan's shoulders sank. "I didn't plan for this," he whispered. "Lucas came to me for training, and we got close, too close. I was confused. I swear to you I didn't mean to hurt you." "Confused?" Ethan repeated softly. "You were confused when you lied to me every night. When you came home smelling like his cologne." His voice trembled now, anger struggling against heartbreak. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, tears threatening but held back. "I didn't lie about everything," he said quietly. "I still love you, Ethan. That hasn't changed." Ethan shook his head slowly. "Love doesn't hide behind closed doors," he said. "It doesn't ask to be found in whispers." Ryan stepped closer, but Ethan stepped back. The distance between them felt immeasurable now. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the slow drip of water from a nearby showerhead, echoing through the room like a ticking clock counting down to the end of something sacred. Finally, Ethan turned toward the door. His voice was steady, almost eerily calm. "You made your choice, Ryan. Maybe not in words, but in moments. And I saw enough." Ryan reached out, but Ethan didn't stop. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, each one heavier than the last. When he reached the exit, he paused, his reflection caught in the glass of the gym's entrance. He didn't recognize the man staring back at him, eyes hollow, chest tight, 1,000 unspoken questions swirling behind a single truth. Outside, the night air hit his face, cold and clean, cutting through the fog in his mind. The city lights blurred in the distance, reflected in the damp pavement. For a moment, Ethan just stood there, breathing, one deep, trembling breath at a time. Behind him, the door closed with a dull thud. A chapter ending in silence. As he walked toward the street, his phone buzzed with a message from Ryan. "Please, don't leave like this. Let me explain." Ethan stared at the screen but didn't reply. Some things, he thought, no longer needed explanations. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, pulled his jacket tighter around himself, and disappeared into the night, where the hum of the city swallowed the sound of his heartbreak. And yet, even as he walked away, one question echoed louder than the rest: how do you rebuild a heart that trusted too much? The following days were heavy with tension, a delicate balance between secrecy and longing. Alex moved through the house with an acute awareness of every footstep, every glance, every sound that might betray him. Marcus, too, carried himself with careful discretion, but the brief moments they shared, an accidental brush of hands, a lingering look across the living room, were enough to set Alex's heart racing. The thrill of what had begun mingled with an ever-present fear: one wrong word, one careless movement, and the fragile intimacy would shatter. Despite the risk, Alex couldn't pull away. He found himself lingering in the kitchen while Marcus prepared meals, fabricating questions just to hear his voice, just to feel the warmth of his presence nearby. Marcus's laughter became a private treasure, a small comfort in the otherwise rigid, controlled environment of the house. Alex noticed the way Marcus's eyes held a mixture of amusement and something deeper, a quiet acknowledgement that they shared a secret world that belonged to no one else. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the tall windows of the mansion, Alex and Marcus found themselves alone in the study. Alex had been arranging some papers when Marcus entered to retrieve a book for Richard. Their eyes met, and the charged silence stretched long enough that Alex felt it settle into his chest like a weight he both dreaded and welcomed. Marcus leaned slightly forward to reach the shelf, and their hands brushed, again, a spark igniting where restraint and desire collided. "It's late," Marcus said softly, though his voice carried no judgment, only awareness. Alex swallowed hard, the words unspoken lingering between them. "I know," Alex replied, his voice barely audible. Every inch of the room seemed amplified, the ticking of the clock, the rustle of pages, the shallow rise and fall of their breaths. It was as if the world had contracted to the space between them, a private chamber of suspended time where nothing existed except the pull that drew them together. The days that followed were a delicate dance. They shared stolen moments in corridors, exchanged quiet words under the pretense of chores, and occasionally lingered longer than propriety allowed. Each interaction strengthened the unspoken bond, and yet, the fear of discovery loomed ever larger. Alex often imagined Richard entering unexpectedly, the consequences of being caught playing vividly in his mind. Yet, the risk made their connection more intoxicating, more urgent, a forbidden fruit that neither could resist. Through it all, Alex began to understand the depth of his own feelings. This was no longer a fleeting fascination or curiosity, it was attachment, desire, and a burgeoning love that challenged everything he had been taught about control, propriety, and family hierarchy. Marcus, too, displayed subtle vulnerabilities, moments of quiet reflection when he seemed almost human in the face of the household's rigid expectations. Alex realized that their intimacy was as much emotional as it was physical, a connection that transcended the surface of attraction and touched the core of who they were. Yet, reality remained unavoidable. Richard's presence, even in absence, cast a shadow over every interaction. Alex knew that the house, for all its luxury and order, was a cage of societal expectations, and that their secret existed in constant defiance of those walls. The thrill of infidelity, of bending rules, of exploring forbidden desire, was exhilarating, but it carried a weight that demanded careful navigation. Each stolen moment became a lesson in restraint and courage, a delicate balance between yearning and caution. By the end of the week, Alex stood by the large window in his room, gazing at the dimly lit garden. Marcus had returned to his duties downstairs, moving through the house with quiet diligence. Alex's thoughts were a tangled web of desire, guilt, and anticipation. He understood, with a mixture of clarity and dread, that nothing would ever be the same. Their connection had crossed a line from which there was no return, and the consequences, though unseen, loomed as large as the mansion itself, yet, despite the fear, Alex felt a deep, undeniable certainty. Something vital had awakened in him, something that challenged his understanding of love, loyalty, and desire. He did not know what the future held, whether discovery would bring shame, rebellion, or liberation, but he knew that the spark between him and Marcus had lit a fire that could not be extinguished. And in that knowledge, a strange comfort settled over him. Some things were worth the risk, no matter the cost.